They slept together to stay alive, but the alien princess wanted more than warmth. The ship came down like a burning star. The man inside held the controls, but the storm outside was stronger than his machine. The sky roared with ice and thunder, and the engines died with a scream. He braced himself, waiting for the end. Metal tore apart as the ship hit the ground. A wall of snow and smoke swallowed everything. Silence followed, broken only by the sound of the wind. He opened his eyes, his body shaking. Pain was everywhere, but he was alive. He pulled himself out from the wreck, the air so cold it cut through his skin. He looked around and saw nothing but white. Endless snow, sharp winds, and a sky hidden behind gray clouds. His breath turned to ice in the air. This world was frozen death, and he knew he would not last long alone. He searched the wreck for supplies. Most of it was destroyed, but he found a flare gun and a small thermal blanket. It was not enough. The cold was a beast that waited for him, crawling into his bones. He thought he was alone, but then he saw her. She stood near the broken edge of the wreck, her silver armor cracked and her face pale from the storm. Her eyes glowed faintly, violet like fire trapped in ice. She was not human. She was alien, tall and slender, with strange marks running across her cheeks. A crown lay broken near her feet, shining faintly in the snow. She looked at him with both fear and pride, as if she would rather die than ask for help. He raised his hand slowly. He did not know her, but he could see she was hurt. Blood, dark and strange, dripped from her arm. She tried to walk but almost fell. He caught her before she hit the ground, and she hissed in anger, pushing him away weakly. "Stay back," she said, her voice shaking. "I do not mean harm," he answered. His words were simple, broken by the cold. "But if you stay out here, you will die." She looked at him with eyes sharp as blades. For a long moment she said nothing. Then the wind screamed louder, throwing ice against their faces. The storm was not ending. He knew they had to find shelter before the night came. They dragged themselves into a part of the wreck where the walls still stood. It gave little protection, but it was better than the open. The man lit a small fire with the ship's fuel, but the flames were weak, shaking in the cold. The princess sat across from him, her body trembling. She held her arm close, trying to stop the bleeding. "Why are you here?" he asked at last. She closed her eyes, refusing to answer. But after a while she whispered, "Betrayal. My people turned against me. My guards are dead, and now I will be too." Her words fell heavy in the silence. The man watched her, wondering if this was true. She looked royal, even broken and cold. He thought of Earth, of winters where families gathered around fire to live through the night. But this was no simple winter. This was a world that wanted them gone. The fire grew weaker. The cold slipped closer. He saw her shaking, her lips blue. His blanket was small, not enough for both. He felt the truth pressing against him. If they stayed apart, the night would kill them. He spoke carefully. "The cold will take us. The only way to live is together." Her eyes widened, anger and disbelief flashing across her face. "You dare," she began, but her voice broke into a cough. She was too weak to stand, and he knew she understood the truth. He moved closer, holding out the blanket. She glared at him, but did not pull away when he wrapped it around them both. Their bodies pressed close, heat shared against the storm. She stiffened, her pride fighting, but after a while her breathing slowed. The man could feel her heartbeat, fast and unsteady. She closed her eyes but did not sleep. He knew she was watching him even in silence, ready to strike if he betrayed her. Yet under the blanket in the broken wreck, something changed. The night outside grew darker. Strange sounds echoed through the storm. Cries of beasts moving across the ice. The fire flickered low, shadows crawling over the walls. He held her closer, and for the first time she did not resist. Her hand touched his chest, maybe for balance, maybe for trust. Neither of them spoke. They only listened to the storm, to the danger outside, to the sound of each other's breath. They had nothing left but this fragile warmth. The man stared at the broken crown lying near her. She was no ordinary alien. She was a princess fallen from power, left to die on a frozen world. And he was a simple human, lost far from home. Yet here, pressed together in the cold night, they were the same. Two lives fighting for one more dawn. The storm raged on, and the wreck groaned under the weight of the snow. They did not know if morning would come, but if it did, they would face it together. For now there was only the cold, and the strange closeness that bound them in silence. The night passed slowly, each second heavy with the sound of the storm. When morning came, the light outside was pale, a dull gray that brought no warmth. The man opened his eyes to find the alien princess still pressed against him. Her breathing was steady now, her face calm in sleep, but her hand still rested lightly on his chest as if she had been holding on through the night. He moved carefully, not wanting to wake her, but her eyes opened at once, sharp and watchful like a predator that never truly rests. She pulled her hand away and sat up, wrapping her arms around herself as if nothing had happened. "You touched me," she said coldly. He shook his head. "No, we survived. That is all." She stared at him for a long moment, then looked away. Her pride was strong, stronger even than the storm outside. Yet she did not deny that without him she would already be gone. They left the wreck to search for food and shelter. The wind was calmer, but the air was still sharp, biting their skin. Snow stretched in every direction, endless and cruel. The man carried the flare gun, though he knew it was little against the beasts that cried in the distance. The princess walked beside him, limping slightly, her injured arm bound in a strip of cloth he had torn from his uniform. "What do they call you?" she asked suddenly. "Daniel," he replied. "And you?" She raised her chin, even in weakness. "Serenia, daughter of the High Crown of Aerie." He almost laughed at the formality. Here they were, broken and cold. Yet she still carried herself like a queen. "Serenia," he repeated, the name strange on his tongue. She studied him. "Your people are far from this place." "Why are you here?" Daniel hesitated. "Exploring. Mapping unknown space. I did not plan this." "No one plans to die," she answered. Her words cut sharp, but her voice held a trace of sadness. As they walked, the ground cracked under their boots. Ice groaned, and Daniel grabbed her arm to steady her. She pulled away, her pride flaring, but did not scold him. Ahead they saw the remains of her shuttle, half buried in snow. The wreckage was twisted, black metal shining against the white ground. Daniel searched inside, finding scraps of rations sealed in strange containers. The food smelled bitter, but hunger forced him to take it. Serenia watched him, then took one container for herself. They ate in silence, the taste harsh but enough to give them strength. While they rested, Daniel noticed marks in the snow, large clawed prints leading around the wreck. He froze, pointing at them. Serenia's eyes narrowed. "Storm beasts," she whispered. "They hunt in packs. If they catch our scent, they will follow until one of us is gone." Daniel felt the weight of her words. He loaded the flare gun, though it was meant for rescue, not war. She saw his fear but said nothing. Her silence was heavier than any storm. As the day dragged on, they built a weak shelter from broken panels of metal and snow. Together they stacked the pieces, their hands numb, their breaths ragged. Each time he passed her a shard of metal, their fingers brushed, and each time she pulled back quickly, as if contact burned her. When the shelter was done, Daniel collapsed inside, his body aching. Serenia sat across from him, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "You risk yourself for me," she said quietly. "Why?" He looked at her, tired but firm. "Because life matters. Yours, mine. Out here, that is all we have." For the first time, her face softened. The sharp lines of pride faded, and a flicker of something else passed through her eyes. She lowered her gaze, whispering, "No one has ever spoken to me like that." The silence between them changed. It was no longer only mistrust and survival. Something unspoken lay in the air, fragile but real. Night came again, darker than before. The cold returned like a cruel master, and they had no choice but to share warmth once more. She lay beside him under the blanket, stiff at first, but slowly her body relaxed. Outside, the storm beasts cried, their howls echoing through the ice. Daniel held his breath, clutching the flare gun, ready for attack. But Serenia's hand brushed his arm, steady and calm. "They will not come close yet," she whispered. "But they are waiting. Tomorrow we must move. We cannot hide here," he nodded, his heart heavy. Survival was not enough anymore. Trust was growing between them, fragile like the fire they guarded through the night. He closed his eyes, knowing that the uneasy alliance they had formed was only the beginning. And in the silence of that frozen night, pressed close once again, Serenia whispered words he almost did not hear. "Warmth is not enough." Her voice carried both warning and promise, and Daniel knew nothing would ever be the same. The second day was colder than the first. The storm had moved on, but the air carried a deeper bite. Every breath Daniel took felt like knives in his chest. The sun was hidden behind thick gray clouds, giving no warmth, only a pale glow that made the land look endless and dead. They left the wreck behind and walked across the snow. Their shelter was weak, their food was almost gone. Serenia walked beside him, her long cloak torn and her silver armor cracked. She carried herself with pride, but Daniel could see the tremor in her steps. Her injury was slowing her and the cold was feeding on her strength. They stopped at the edge of a frozen plain where the ground stretched flat and wide. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of ice cracking somewhere far away. Daniel scanned the horizon. Nothing moved, but the memory of the claw prints haunted him. "We cannot cross this," he said, shaking his head. Her violet eyes narrowed. "We must. On the other side lies the caves. Shelter, heat. Without them, we will not see another night." He looked at the endless white. It was a death path, open and exposed. But she was right, staying here was also death. With no choice, they began the crossing. Hours passed like years. The cold burned their lungs, their feet sank deep into snow with each step. The silence grew worse until it was broken by a sound Daniel feared. A low guttural growl rolled across the plain. He froze, his hand gripping the flare gun. Serenia turned her head slowly, her eyes sharp as blades. From the far side of the plain, shapes appeared. Massive beasts with fur like black shadows and eyes glowing faint green. Their bodies were thick with muscle, claws long as blades. The storm beasts? They moved on four legs, circling slowly, their growls echoing in the wind. Serenia's face tightened. "Do not run," she whispered. "They hunt fear. They strike when prey flees." Daniel nodded, though his heart hammered in his chest. The beast circled closer. One raised its head and let out a roar that shook the ground. Daniel raised the flare gun, but his hand shook. There were too many. Before he could act, Serenia stepped forward. Her violet eyes burned brighter, and the strange marks on her cheeks glowed faintly. She raised her hand, her fingers trembling. A wave of light spread from her palm, striking the beasts. They shrieked, stumbling back, their eyes filled with sudden fear. But the power drained her instantly. She staggered, almost falling. Daniel caught her before she hit the ice, holding her against his chest. Her body shook violently, her breath ragged. "You cannot," he began, but she cut him off with a weak whisper. "It is the only way. Run, Daniel." While they fear, but he did not run. Instead, he pulled her arm over his shoulder, lifting her as best as he could. The beasts shook their heads, confused by the strange light, but they would not stay afraid forever. Daniel moved fast, dragging her toward the far side of the plain. The beasts followed, slow at first, then faster. Their claws tore through the snow, their growls rising. Daniel's breath came hard, but he did not stop. He would not leave her. They reached a wall of ice at the edge of the plain. A crack opened like a dark mouth leading into caves. Daniel pushed inside, pulling Serenia with him. The air grew colder, but at least the beast could not follow easily. He pressed her against the wall, her body weak, her eyes half closed. "You saved me," he whispered, holding her tight. Her lips curved into a faint smile, though her face was pale. "Foolish human. I could not let you die. You are mine to protect now." Her words confused him, but before he could speak, the beasts roared outside the cave, their claws scratching at the ice. The sound was like thunder. Daniel loaded the last flare, aiming at the mouth of the cave. When the first beast pushed through, he fired. The flare exploded in red fire, blinding the creature. It shrieked and fled, the others pulling back in fear. For now, they were safe. Daniel lowered the gun, his body shaking. He turned back to Serenia. She was resting against the wall, her eyes half shut. He knelt beside her, brushing the snow from her face. "You nearly killed yourself," he said softly. Her eyes opened slowly. "I told you. Warmth is not enough. Survival is not enough. There must be more." Daniel stared at her, her words heavy with meaning. For the first time, he realized this was not just about living through the night. It was about trust, about something binding them in a way he did not yet understand. The beasts outside roared again, but he did not fear them as much now. He looked at Serenia, her fragile body leaning against him, and he knew the bond between them had been tested, and somehow it had grown stronger. The cave was dark, filled with the sound of dripping water and the distant groan of shifting ice. Daniel lit a small fire with the last of the fuel he carried, the weak flame casting shadows along the frozen walls. Serenia sat beside him, her body still weak from the power she had used. Her violet eyes glowed faintly in the firelight, watching him with an expression he could not read. He offered her a strip of dried rations, and after a moment she took it. She ate slowly, as if every bite was a reminder of her weakness. Daniel studied her face. Even exhausted and wounded, she carried herself like royalty, proud and untouchable. Yet here she was, stranded with him, sharing fire and food like any ordinary survivor. When the silence grew heavy, Daniel spoke. "You said betrayal. What did you mean?" Her eyes lifted to his, sharp and distant. For a long time she said nothing. Then with a slow breath she answered, "I was not meant to live. My people sent me here to die. I am a threat to their power." Daniel frowned. "A princess. Hunted by her own? Why?" Her voice was bitter. "Because I was different. I believed we should not rule with chains but with bonds. I believed there could be trust between worlds, even between my people and yours. For that I was marked a traitor." The words sank deep. Daniel stared into the fire, trying to imagine a world where leaders would betray their own blood. Yet looking at her, he knew it was true. The broken crown in the wreck, the shadows in her eyes, it all told the same story. "Your own family?" he asked quietly. Serenya's lips tightened. "My brother sits on the throne now. He is cruel, but the people fear him. He believes strength is control and love is weakness. When he struck at me, no one dared to stand in his way. My guards died defending me, but in the end it was not enough." Her hand brushed against her cracked armor, her fingers trembling slightly. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. Not at her, but at the thought of power so twisted it would throw her away like nothing. "You are not weak," he said firmly. "I saw what you did out there. Those beasts feared you." She shook her head. "That power comes with a cost. Each time I use it, it takes a piece of me. It is not endless, Daniel. One day it will take everything." Her honesty cut through the cold. He realized she had risked more than her life when she saved him. She had given away part of her strength, her very essence, to keep him alive. The fire burned low, shadows crept closer, and the cries of storm beasts echoed faintly outside. Daniel leaned back against the wall, his body aching. Serenya shifted closer, her cloak brushing against his arm. She said nothing, but her closeness spoke more than words. After a long silence, she whispered, "Do you trust me, human?" Daniel looked at her. He thought of the cold nights, of her pride, of the way she had nearly died to protect him. "Yes," he said simply. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she had not expected the answer. She turned away, her expression hidden by shadows, but her hand rested on his arm for the briefest moment before pulling back. The next morning, they left the cave. The storm had passed, but danger was still close. The plain stretched behind them, and in the distance Daniel saw smoke rising into the sky. At first he thought it was another wreck, but Serenya's face hardened as she recognized it. "Not smoke," she said. "A beacon. Hunters." "Hunters?" Daniel asked. She nodded. "They know I survived the crash. They will come to finish what my brother started." "And now," her eyes darkened, "they will kill you too because you stand with me." Daniel felt the weight of her words. He was no longer just a lost explorer. By standing at her side, he had become part of her war. They moved carefully across the frozen ground, heading toward higher cliffs where she said more caves lay hidden. But the sense of being followed grew stronger with each step. The crack of ice, the faint hum of energy in the air, the shadows moving where none should be. At night they rested in a hollow beneath jagged rocks. Daniel kept watch while Serenya slept, though even in sleep her body shook with tension. When he looked at her, he felt something strange. She was no longer just a survivor he had saved. She was something more, something he could not explain. In the silence, Daniel whispered to himself, "This is no longer about warmth. This is about us." The words surprised him, but they were true. He could feel it. The bond between them was no longer about the storm or the beasts. It was something deeper, something that might change everything. The next day, his fear became real. At the edge of the cliffs they saw them, figures in dark armor moving with precision, their weapons glowing faintly blue. Hunters. Serenya's face turned pale, her violet eyes burning with anger and sorrow. "They will not stop. Not until I am gone." Daniel tightened his grip on the flare gun, though it was nearly useless now. He stood tall, meeting her gaze. "Then they will have to go through me first." For a moment, her mask of pride cracked. She looked at him with something close to wonder, and for the first time she smiled, not cold or proud, but soft and real. "You are a fool, Daniel," she whispered. "But perhaps you are my fool." The hunters closed in, their shadows falling over the snow. The truth was revealed. Her past, her enemies, and the bond between them. Now, survival would mean facing not just the cold, but an empire that wanted her dead. And he had already chosen his side. The hunters moved across the snow like shadows made of steel. Their armor gleamed faintly blue in the pale light, and their weapons hummed with quiet menace. Daniel and Serenia crouched low behind the rocks at the cliff's edge, watching as the enemy spread out. The air was filled with the sound of their boots pressing into the ice, steady and certain, like the march of death itself. Daniel tightened his grip on the useless flare gun. He had fired the last flare days ago, yet still he held the weapon, as if belief alone could make it strong again. Serenia watched him, her violet eyes filled with both fire and sorrow. "They will come in waves," she whispered. "They will drive us into the open. Once they surround us, there will be no escape." Daniel swallowed hard. "Then we don't let them surround us." She almost laughed at his stubbornness, but her face grew serious again. "You would fight for me, though you owe me nothing?" He looked at her, his breath clouding in the frozen air. "You are wrong. I do owe you. You gave me a reason to live out here. If I leave you, I lose myself too." Her lips parted as if to speak, but the moment was broken by the sharp crack of a rifle. A bolt of blue energy struck the rock above them, sending shards of ice raining down. The hunters had found their mark. Daniel grabbed Serenia's arm and pulled her deeper into the cave tunnels that cut through the cliffs. The walls were jagged, sharp as blades, and the path twisted in darkness. The hunters' lights followed, glowing like ghostly eyes. The sound of pursuit grew closer. Serenia stumbled once, her injured arm slowing her. Daniel caught her, dragging her forward with every ounce of strength left in his body. He could hear their voices now, cold, mechanical orders spoken in a language he did not understand. At last they reached a chamber deep inside the cliffs. The ceiling glistened with frozen crystals, the air thick with silence. There was no way forward, no exit. A dead end. Serenia leaned against the wall, her breath ragged. Her eyes met Daniel's, filled with both pride and despair. "It ends here." "No," Daniel said firmly. His hands shook, but his voice was steady. "Not like this. Not for you." The hunters appeared at the mouth of the chamber, their weapons raised, their armor reflecting the weak firelight. They moved slowly, certain of victory. Daniel raised the empty flare gun standing in front of Serenia. He knew it would not save them, but he would not fall to his knees. Then Serenia stepped forward, her hand brushing his shoulder. Her violet eyes burned brighter than ever before, her marks glowing with a light that filled the chamber. She raised her injured arm, ignoring the pain, and power flared from her body like a storm made of stars. The hunters hesitated, their weapons trembling as the light swallowed the chamber. One fired, but the bolt dissolved before it touched her. Serenia's voice rang out, not weak now, but strong and commanding. "You will not take me," she said. "You will not touch him." Her power surged, striking the hunters with waves of burning light. They staggered, blinded and broken, retreating under her force. The chamber shook as her energy spread, cracking the walls of ice. But Daniel saw the cost. Her body trembled violently, her breath faltered. Each burst of power was tearing her apart. "Stop!" he shouted, grabbing her arm. "You'll kill yourself." Her eyes met his. For a moment, all the pride and distance in her gaze was gone. What remained was raw, human-like emotion. "If it means you live," she whispered, "then it is worth it." Daniel's heart hammered. He pulled her close, holding her trembling body. "No. We live together or not at all." His words broke through the storm of light. Her power wavered, but in his arms she steadied. The hunters, blinded and broken, fled into the tunnels. The chamber fell silent again, the glow fading, leaving only the crackle of ice and the sound of their ragged breaths. Serenia collapsed into his chest, weak but alive. He held her, refusing to let go. For a long time they stayed that way, two survivors clinging to each other in the ruins of the storm. When at last she lifted her head, her violet eyes softened. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice faint but sure. You are more than warmth to me. You are more than survival. You are what I choose. He stared at her, stunned by the weight of her words. She was a princess, hunted by her own empire, and yet here she was, binding herself to him with nothing but truth. Outside the cave, the storm had cleared. In the distance, faint lights shone in the sky, the glow of a rescue craft searching the frozen land. Daniel looked at her. Your people? She shook her head. Not mine, not anymore. I will not go back to chains. I will not live in shadows. He understood then. She had chosen not just survival but defiance, not just warmth but something greater. As the lights grew closer, Serenia took his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was strong. If they come for me again, they will face us both, she said. Daniel nodded. Then let them come. Together they stepped out of the cave into the pale light of dawn. The storm was gone, the sky stretched wide above them, and though danger still waited in the future, so did something stronger, something no empire could crush. What began as a desperate night of shared warmth had become the start of a bond that reached beyond survival, beyond fear, beyond worlds, and neither of them would ever face the cold alone again.